with a sense of distress that we are repeatedly coming to this honorable court, my lords, that the democratic process is getting undermined, my lords. That's really the problem. I'll tell my lord what the problem in our writ petition, what we are really now aggrieved about and what we are wanting to highlight. What is going on? Day of elections, my lords, violence, unprecedented violence, widely reported. I don't think it will be any ingenuous. 17 lives have been lost so far, election day and post-election. This is the first problem we have. Total 37. Number two, since the start of, my lords, the election process on the 8th or 9th, right from that day, my lords, until now, the numbers are much more. Now, it's one thing, my lords, because of my lord's benign indulgence at every stage, probably the numbers have gone down. But unfortunate truth is, these acts of violence, intentional acts of violence, vandalism, have continued unabated. This is problem number one. Problem number two, my lords, is what is the effect this has had on the election? We have given instances, we have given photographs, my lords, of how much of violence has taken place by which ballot papers have been tampered with. There is one photograph of, my lords, a person urinating, my lords, on the ballot box. This is really, my lords, defiling the democratic process beyond imagination. I asked myself the question, what kind of effective steps were taken by the SEC, my lords? Surely the SEC must be called upon to give an answer as to report as to what kind of steps were taken, where appropriate, given instructions for deployment of the central forces. Initially, the stand, my lords, was that no need for any central forces, we'll take care of everything. Then they said 22 companies. Then they said 822. They scaled it up to 822. Then they complained saying that only 300 or 350 are coming. Then the entire complement was made available. After all that, they owe it to my lords to say what kind of instructions were given for deployment and what steps were taken to prevent all of this. Then, my lords, during the transfer of the ballot papers, during the counting process, which seems to be underway even now, there have been problems. In fact, in our writ petition, we have catalogued the problems, some of the major problems which are there. Please come to my writ petition from page 17 onwards, 16, 17 onwards. We have given instance after instance. One minute. The petitioner state at this juncture, it is pertinent to list out the various instances of electoral malpractices and the violence which was perpetrated during the entire electoral process, and more specifically on the 8th of July, as a consequence of which 17 lives were lost, and the electoral process was exactly opposite to what was envisaged by this honorable court in the various orders passed in the public interest litigations moved before this honorable court prior to the elections. I'm reading from page 17 onwards, my lord, my apology. Yes. Para 12. 12A. Right from the inception, the electoral process was compromised, which is evident from the fact that a purported candidate of the ruling dispensation filed his nomination while being in Saudi Arabia. Judicial notice was taken of such infraction, whereafter his nomination was cancelled. Thus, from the very inception, there have been instances of compromise with the electoral process. Further, prior to the day for withdrawal of nominations, extreme pressure was perpetrated upon the candidates of the opposition parties to forcibly withdraw their nominations. Allegations were leveled of threats of rape, murder, and other heinous crimes if any person contested the election to put up an electoral resistance against the ruling dispensation in the state. All such instances of infraction culminated into the perpetration of large-scale violence and electoral malpractices such as booth capturing, rigging, false voting, and intimidating voters in a huge number of booths during the elections held on 8/7/2023. It was widely reported in the press that at various booths across the state, ballot boxes were looted and thrown into ponds, ballot papers were burnt, and there were also instances of antisocial elements intimidating presiding officers and running away with ballot boxes. Various instances of continuous false voting were also reported by the mainstream media from various locations. There were certain booths in Diamond Harbour. We have localized, my lords, some of those instances where antisocial elements affiliated to the ruling dispensation in the state resorted to false voting by keeping the polling party and the police officials posted therein at gunpoint. Thereafter, at so-and-so, booth number 1 witnessed a strange phenomenon where the presiding officer himself was dictating people where to put the stamp of mandate on the ballot paper. It was also reported at some blocks that a single person put his thumb impression and cast several hundred votes, thereby committing malpractice. As a matter of fact, police personnel were themselves not safe, which is evident from the fact that certain police officers sustained injury in Malda. Vote looting was also reported at village so-and-so. Then agent of so-and-so was killed inside a booth at Kuch Bihar. False voting and electoral malpractices were also reported from such and such a place. Again, we have given the details. Then false voting reported from another place. Most shocking incident was that a photograph was clicked where a miscreant was seen urinating on a ballot box and making a mockery of the sacred democratic festival. Mandal this just goes on, my lords. We have given all the details. Now, there is one other important aspect I want to highlight here, my lords. The State Election Commission itself considered it necessary and appropriate to order re-election in about 600 or 700 booths. In fact, we made representations on the day of polling that so much of violence and booth capturing and rigging and all the other problems have taken place. Therefore, there ought to be repolling in manifold more number of booths.
50,000. I have said.
In fact, they have said 50,000, but with a sense of proportionality, my lords, we have come before this honorable court. We have given Annexure 8. We have said at least in 6,000 more booths, there has to be repolling. Therefore, the SEC has to tell my lords on what basis repolling was ordered, and that too only in 600 booths.
Yes.
What is the basis on which they ordered deployment? What were the instructions for deployment of forces? What steps were taken? When were the instructions given? Surely, my lords, it is not as though the proceedings which are taking place and some undertakings are given or directions are issued. They ought to be followed in this letter and spirit.
One policeman was also injured.
Yes. No.
And my lord, one point is there, those booths in which process the murder was happened, no repolling order was there. They have captured those booths from first hour of the voting, my lord, on a my lord.
In
I
fact,
have annexed, my lord.
It appears repolling has been ordered in booths where probably it's not warranted at all.
Yes.
My lord.
Yes.
6,000 we have identified instances where incidents have occurred. No, SEC ought to give an explanation what really is happening and what has happened. Now,
Yeah, that 6,000 booths you have identified.
yes, please see Annexure 8, my lords, in my petition, page 190. It starts, my lords, at page 191. Yeah, that's right. My lords can start with 190. In fact, I'll read from 189 also to the Commissioner, West Bengal State Election Commission. I'm reading from 189.
Yes.
This is on 8/7, the date of polling itself. We do not have any words to describe the complete failure of the Commission to conduct a free and fair poll, maintaining its purity as repeatedly ordered by the High Court. Just on polling days, 17 precious human lives were lost, widespread rigging, in many instances with active participation of polling officer, non-deployment of any force, state and central. Despite court orders, civic volunteers were used. Accordingly, we demand repoll be announced in all booths, where CCTV video footages show false voting, where CCTV video footages show polling officers' involvement in rigging. Also, disciplinary action be initiated against such officers, where so-and-so candidate or agent were forcibly removed before the end of the polls. Furthermore, to ensure free and fair voting, promulgation of 144 in the entire area of police stations within which counting centers have been established. Considering the past track record of the party in power, central forces should be retained for at least 15 days after the results. Now, please see further the next communication. Page 190, the next day. You will recollect yesterday the so-and-so BJP WP West Bengal delegation, when it called on you, asked you to review the CCTV and video footages to establish booths which have to be repolled due to booth loot, polling officers seen participating and helping in rigging, where BJP candidates and agents were forced to leave or removed from polling stations. Attached to the list of booths compiled by us as of now, more details are being sent to respective district magistrates by our district officers. The incidents of violence, booth capturing, intimidating, using of arms, etc., were so huge that it is still taking a time to compile the same. Since last night, the TMC has inflicted another round of reign of terror, burning houses, looting shops, kidnapping our candidates, agents, resulting in many people being forced to flee from their homes. This is further delaying the process of compiling the list. Under the circumstances, we demand that the counting date delayed so that there is time to make proper assessment of repoll required. Else, it will be a farcical exercise, which will be a final blow to the Panchayat Gram elections of 2023. Then, my lords, this list is attached, where we have given details as have been collected as on that date. And this goes up to 199. Now, one more thing. Please see 188 ballots in that same breath.
Yes,
This is the this is the list of the booths where repolling was ordered by the SEC. 698.
yes.
Now, what basis these have been chosen? What kind of application of mind took place to decide on these? What happened to the representation made in respect of all the other booths which we made?
And what is the list in page 202?
202.
Same list.
Same list.